This is probably like the number one question that I get too from people who are like, is therapy supposed to look like this? The answer is no. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name's Mickey, I'm a therapist, and we talk about therapy things on this channel. Today, we are talking about 7 signs that it's time for you to break up with your therapist. I recently made a video about how to know when you're done with therapy, and there was quite a few questions about like, what if you need to break up with your therapist, or what if your therapist is a shithead? And I thought that that was something useful for us to discuss. So we're going to talk about it. As always, this content is meant to be educational and entertainment based. This is not therapy. It's not a replacement for therapy. If you need a therapist, there are links in the description to find one. But this is meant to be like funny, haha, useful tips and tricks type of learning stuff. And as always, feel free to take what works and leave the rest. Some of these will apply, some of these will not. Some of these will work for someone, so maybe they won't. That's totally fine. I'm just a lady who happens to know about therapy, talking about therapy on the internet. So if your therapist does some of these, it's not a sign that they're a terrible person or a bad fit for you. I just want to talk about these for the purpose of educating and empowering. So let's do the thing. Sign number 1 is that they can't take criticism. All the rest of the things on this list, in theory, if you don't have like all 7, can be worked through if your therapist is able to effectively take criticism and make changes. This is why it's like red flag number 1, in my opinion. If your therapist is not able or willing to take criticism or like notes from you, because therapists, first and foremost, are human beings. We are flawed and we fuck up and we make errors. And the field of therapy is like a soft science for a reason, because there's not a one-size-fits-all prescriptive way to be a therapist. Sometimes we will fuck it up. However, if your therapist is able to set their ego aside and really hear you and saying, you did this thing and it didn't work for me, or you said something and it really hurt my feelings, or you're just being this way and I don't like it, and make changes, hearing that feedback, that's a very valuable skill. So if your therapist is not able to do that, in my opinion, time to go. Because making mistakes as a clinician is something that's part of the framework. It's like built into the DNA of the field. We will make mistakes as clinicians. I have made mistakes. My mentors have made mistakes. That's okay. The work and the skill is in learning from those and making changes moving forward. Sign number 2 is that they bulldoze you. If you feel like you're in therapy and like, first of all, you're the one who's not really doing most of the talking and like you can't really get a word in edgewise, but second of all, like there's not really room for your opinion, bad sign. It's very important that therapists make space for our clients, because while we do some resource dispensing and some perspective providing or reflecting or like what the fuck ever, right? Primarily the goal in therapy is for clients to be airing out thoughts, feelings, perspectives, issues, and verbalizing and working through, how does this affect me? Where does this come from? Etc., etc. A lot of the learning sometimes in therapy comes from being able to say that stuff out loud, and then like when we hear it, we have like epiphanies about it. So it's important that therapists, or not therapists, clients have space to talk, and also that you feel like your opinion is being honored as valid and real, because ultimately you are the one who is the expert in your own life. I know it's kind of a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. You are the only one who knows all of the things about your own life and about what's going on in your very complex inner world. So your therapist should be willing to validate that ultimately you get to make the calls about what's going on in your life, what you want to do, what you want your relationships to look like, all the things. It's yours to own, especially because the consequences of those choices are yours to own alone, and your therapist doesn't have to do it, and so it's not fair for them to be telling you what to do. And so it's very important that a therapist not be bulldozing you and talking over you, not making space for you, because that's not our job. That's not what we're here for. Sign number 3 is that they're consistently forgetting things about you. In the time that I've been on the internet as a therapist, this seems to be like issue number 1, like complaint numero uno. People get really fucking mad when their therapist forgets stuff about them, and for good reason. First of all, if you're a therapist and you have a shit memory, take better notes. It's just a necessary part of the field that we remember things about our clients. And if your therapist doesn't remember things you tell them on a consistent basis, like forgetting something one time, sure, whatever, but like consistently not remembering the same story that you've told them, or not remembering like who your family and friends are, or remembering their names, or needing the rundown for a situation over and over and over again, first of all, it's a fucking waste of time. Your time in therapy is valuable because it's very expensive to be there sometimes. Wasting time telling someone the story over and over and over and over again is really fucking annoying. But second of all, it doesn't feel good, you know? Therapy is an inherently personal relationship. It's very important that your therapist be honoring that and making a conscientious effort to get to know you and like really remember these things. Girlfriend. Sign number 3 is that you feel embarrassed or ashamed after you leave a session. In one of the very first videos that I uploaded on this channel that mercifully now is private because it was really poorly made, I went on a whole rant about how you should never, ever, ever leave a session feeling ashamed of yourself. And I think that is probably one of the only things that is like still holds up to the test of time. You should never, ever, ever leave a session feeling ashamed of yourself. If your therapist makes you feel ashamed of yourself, get the fuck out of there. That's not okay. That's not cool. And it's also like the antithesis of the work that we're doing as clinicians. Our job is not to judge you. It's certainly not to prescribe to you what we think you should be doing or what the right choice is, but it is especially not our job to make you feel like shit about yourself. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's very important for therapists to call attention to problematic behavior patterns or like incorrect perceptions or thoughts and beliefs about people and relationships in the world. And I, as a clinician for sure, have had the conversation where I'm like, ooh, babes, this one might be you. That's okay. But we can do it, and a skilled therapist should be able to do it in a way that's kind, that's compassionate, and that honors that you are still a good person at the core. However, this behavior might not be serving your best interest or allowing you to grow to your, better potential. There's a big, big difference between letting someone know, hey, I'm wondering if this is like really serving your goals, or if maybe this is a behavior pattern that's left over from some time and it's just not really serving you anymore, and saying, oh, that's super embarrassing. That was a shitty thing to do, or you're a bad person. That's fucked up. If your therapist makes you feel ashamed of yourself, especially if they're judging you and just like being icky, ew, get out of there. That therapist is not your therapist for sure, but potentially has some work to do on themselves. I very much want to honor and validate that when we have that feeling of like, I didn't like that and that felt really bad, that's not something that should be normal in therapy. That's not our job. Good therapists should be able to help clients grow, and like not in a kitten gloving kind of way, but in a like kind and compassionate kind of way. Sign number 5 is that they seem bored of you or like annoyed by you, especially if you're noticing like eye rolling, big sighs, not paying attention, like just not really like giving you engagement. This is a red flag in my opinion, because while it is very important for us to honor that therapists are human beings who get tired or have neurodivergency, maybe have attention issues or focus issues, it is also very important for us to honor impact over intent. And if your therapist is making you feel like you're not important, or making you feel like they're annoyed at you, or they just don't really care, this is a problem. Therapists should fucking care. If they don't care about their clients, I think that begs the question about whether it's time for like a break, or some self-care, or like some really firm supervision with a mentor, or like more trained and experienced therapist. Because yes, sometimes there are days for sure where therapists are just like burnt out and we're tired, but that's not an excuse to treat clients as like a problem or an annoyance to you. Your therapist should really be making a best effort to engage, to make you feel heard, and to make you feel like the session that you're having is important. Like they're here, they're showing up for work, and they're not just like clocking in and clocking out. Sign number 6 is that they tell you a whole lot about their own life and their own problems. Don't get me wrong, self-disclosure, that's the fancy therapy name for this, self-disclosure, is sometimes a very useful tool in therapy. Self-disclosure can be a useful tool for building rapport. I have also used it as a tool in session for humanizing myself and the profession and destigmatizing mental illness or certain behaviors and things like that. But therapists should be able to walk the line of like appropriate self-disclosure and like inappropriate self-disclosure. For me, typically this looks like not sharing things that are actively happening in my life. Like if it's not a resolved issue, I'm not going to discuss it. And if I'm going to share something, it also needs to be directly and obviously relevant to the issue that my client is voicing to me. For example, this might look like sharing a very short story about something that I said or did in the throes of mental illness that made me feel shame later on, in the goal of like destigmatizing the fact that like this is a thing that we do, right? Like this is morally neutral and very human to maybe not be our best selves all the time when we're in the middle of mental illness or like an episode or something like that. But if your therapist is like dumping their shit, that's a problem. You should never feel responsible for your therapist's emotions. You should never feel like you're caregiving them, and you should never feel like it's crossing the line between like therapist and client to like friends. There are very necessary and important boundaries that exist in therapy for the client's safety. The therapeutic relationship only functions when everybody is being mindful of the healthy boundaries there. And so if you feel like your therapist is walking over that line, it is very much okay for you to like voice that to them and try to have a conversation about adjusting that behavior and or just leaving. If it makes you uncomfortable to do that, it's okay to just say like, I need to go. I don't like this. It's not working for me. Sign number 7 is that you're never working on actionable goals. Don't get me wrong. Not all therapists need to be doing like type A, like step 1, step 1A, step 1B, step 1C type of goals or treatment plans. But if you feel like the sessions that you have with your therapist at the end of like a certain amount of time just kind of amount to nothing and that bothers you, that's potentially a problem. Therapy is inherently goal-oriented. Now, don't misunderstand. I very much take issue with the way that like especially commercialized health insurance companies force therapists to structure therapy, because sometimes the work is more amorphous in that we're just exploring thoughts, feelings, and behaviors around a particular issue. That's okay. However, I will die on this hill that therapy is something that is supposed to be time limited in most cases. Not everyone needs to leave therapy, and some people will be chronically in therapy. That's okay. However, there should still be goals. And especially for those who aren't chronically in therapy or like it's a feasible option for them to discharge and leave, we need to be mindful as the clinician about not wasting our clients' time and not asking them to participate in a service that sometimes is like very much a financial burden because we're too lazy to be setting the goals or because we're like overwhelmed or we don't like treatment plans. Doesn't matter. Like, I think it's very important from like a respect for our client's perspective that your therapist is helping you work towards something, especially if that feels important to you. I really want to honor it's okay for you to say, what are we doing here? You know, like, where am I going? What like goals am I working towards? Or like, maybe these are the goals that I have and can you help me work towards them? That's very much okay. This is probably like the number one question that I get too from people who are like, is therapy supposed to look like this? Where like, I'm just going, but like, we're not really doing anything. The answer is no. Especially if you're a person who just feels drawn towards goals, it is okay to say, I want to be working towards something in particular. Not every session has to be like rip-roaring, banging out the goals, but generally there should be a sense of purpose and a sense of direction for your services. Like I mentioned at the beginning, not all of these things individually are a sign that your therapist sucks and you need to run for the hills, especially if you're a person who feels comfortable voicing your concerns and having a conversation. I would encourage you to do that. And again, like if there's like 1 or 2 of these things, but you still really like your therapist and the work that you're doing is still really effective, that's okay. You don't have to leave. I'm not here to tell you like, get out of there, run away. Like, that's not what I'm saying. However, if you're noticing quite a few of these things, or if one of these things is enough and you're just like, ooh, gotta go, please know that you are very much allowed to do that. The purpose that I have here is just in honoring that therapists are imperfect people and not all therapists are created equal. So if it doesn't work for you, if it feels like bad vibes, that's okay. You are allowed to leave. If you like this video, like the video. Let me know what your guys' thoughts and feels are in the comments. Especially if you guys have your own like red flags or like signs that it's time. Let me know what those are. And then subscribe to the channel. We recently hit 100K. I'm very excited about it and I'm excited to see the channel grow. So subscribe, stick around. We do fun stuff here. And then share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. And I will see you guys next time.